Okay, so this is my Brazilian Raspberry Pi 3B Plus from 2017, which I've just recently got. And what I thought I'd do is try and optimize it and get the best performance from it, because Chromium is atrocious on it. It keeps crashing and freezing and just not good at all. So I'm going to end the process, and I'm actually going to delete it because there's no point in having on there if it's not going to work. And in fact, look, even ending the process doesn't work. It definitely doesn't like 1 gig of RAM. So if I do Control-Alt-Delete, will that do it? Okay, so I've waited a while and nothing's happening. So I'm just going to switch it off and on again, and I'm just going to delete Chromium. But before I do that, I'm going to lower the desktop resolution, because that definitely helps an OS to run, and at 720 it's still very usable. So screens, HDMI, resolution, and 720. There we go. I'm going to move the taskbar because I really don't like it at the top. So bottom. Shall we add temperature down the bottom? So add CPU temperature monitor. There we go. And you can customize this. So if I close that down, right click and temperature monitor settings. So you can put the foreground to whatever color you want. And then the background as well, you can put something else on there. Let's change the color of this. Actually, I usually do that after I've changed the wallpaper. So I'm going to change the wallpaper. I've got some AI on my NAS drive. So if I go network, see, it's working all right at 720 already, I think. Public, I've got them in here, I think. Yeah, these are all created with Copilot. I've got a separate video on how these were created. So if we open one just to see which one we're going to use, and this bit obviously is a bit slower. So that's the one I often use. We've also got a few different ones, and more recently I created some with bikes as well, which I quite like. This one's pretty cool. But I think I'm going to go with, yeah, I think I quite like this one. So this is 315. So let's just copy that one into home and pictures. And let's save that there. And then we'll change the wallpaper from here, and so in pictures, just double click on that. So that's fine, and let's just change the color of the taskbar just so it looks a bit better with this wallpaper. So I'm going to go for a darker color. Should we go with the purple? And just change the writing on there to white, just because it stands out better on the purple. Okay, that will do for that. Now let's get rid of Chromium. So we're going to add remove, which is under preferences, and we go to internet. I don't really use this very much anymore because I use KDE Plasma. The Discover store just is a lot nicer to use. But if we scroll down through, we should find the Chromium browser somewhere. What's the links bit that's already installed? Classic non-graphical text mode web browser. So Firefox is in there, so we'll uncheck that. Here we go, Chromium. So let's uncheck those and this one, and let's do apply, and 628 megabytes. That's good. Continue. Okay, that's done. Now next, I need to install PyApps to get the Puffin browser, but I've deleted the web browser. But luckily, Dillo is still on here, which seems to be some default on there. But if I click home, you can see we can tap in here. So google.co.uk. Oh, and I'm going to need www. And let's hit continue and do a search for PyApps and search. And it feels quite snappy, but obviously, as you can see, it's super basic. So we've got the GitHub and we've got this here. It might be easier to find the install script on this one. I usually use the GitHub. Oh, install now. Okay. Yeah, and it's this bit we need. Okay, so right click doesn't copy. So Control C, hopefully that works. And let's open a terminal with Control Alt T, and that doesn't work. Control V. Ugh. Why can you not copy from this browser? Okay, I'm just going to type it out. I have no idea why you wouldn't let you copy and paste. HTTPS. Right, please work. Maybe it's the 0, so press up and it will let me go back to edit that. So it must be a capital O. It was. That is just like my ZX Spectrum days of old, where I would code 3 or 4 pages out of a magazine to see a really basic thing, and you'd find that one thing was wrong, and you'd have to go back through it all over again. Okay, so Pi Apps is installing. I think it works with the Pi 3B Plus. It's optimized for the Pi 4, and the Pi 5 is also being supported by it pretty well as well. This bit's running all right though, and I still haven't overclocked yet. What's funny about that Dillo is that it's not actually in here, so I could just try in here, just typing in Dillo. Let's just close down that web browser. So Dillo. Oh, okay, so you can launch it with that, but it doesn't have anywhere on here that mentions it. So it's kind of behind the scenes. But it's nice to know it's there, and especially for older devices, maybe like a original Pi, maybe this will be a bit usable. So, if I put in www.bbc.co.uk/sport, probably. Yeah, that comes up. So if you wanted to check your sports results, what's it doing here? We can, why have I got 2? Okay, right, no, that's not good. So Pi Apps is here. Let's double click on that and we'll execute it. And we need to go to Internet and Browsers, and Puffin's still there. So it speeds up web browsing thanks to cloud servers. This web browser uses cloud servers to load websites for you instead of making your Pi do it all. Result, a claimed 1600% browsing speed increase. And this is also really good if you don't have a lot of data. So if you're on a really limited plan, because it's doing it in the cloud, it's really not using anywhere near as much data. But obviously check that before you venture into it. So install that. Looks like it's doing its thing. Yeah. Okay, so that's all done. So we can close that down. And let's see if it shows up under Internet. It does. See my temperature creeping up, 56 degrees. I need to put a fan on there before I start overclocking. Oh, this might not be working. Okay, that's annoying. So basically the browser doesn't launch, and I've just tried it on a Pi 4 to see if it's to do with the Pi 3, and it also does the same, so it tries for a bit and then it gives in. So I'm currently on my Raspberry Pi 4 just to test it. But I have got an image for a Raspberry Pi 02W, which has got Puffin on it, an older version of Raspberry Pi OS. So I might have to do this whole same process, but with an older version. Let's have a look at that. So I'm back on an SD card in the Pi 3B at the moment, and I'm using, as you can see, the Firefox browser to see if that works all right. I just want to download a version of Raspberry Pi OS that's older, so we don't need the latest bookworm. So operating system images, I think this one is probably the one. So yeah, Raspberry Pi OS, don't want the 64-bit. I don't think anyway. So Raspberry Pi OS with desktop, and if I go to archive, there will be a time before it was on bookworm. You can see my mouse is really slow on certain bits. It's all right when there's not loads of images on the page, but yeah, so when did it come in then? I'm going to have to look up one of my videos of when bookworm started. So 9 months ago we got Raspberry Pi OS bookworm. So I need to go back before October. I'm going to go for this one. So February 2023, and Raspberry Pi OS Bullseye, so not bookworm. So that's all finished downloading. I'm going to close down Firefox and use Raspberry Pi Imager to write that to the SSD drive again. So let's launch that. Choose OS, use custom, and this is the one we just downloaded. Choose storage, so that's my SSD drive. Next, not going to apply any settings, and yes to continue. Okay, that should be pretty quick. Okay, that's all done, so I'm going to shut this down and reboot with the SSD drive that I've newly written. Okay, so if I'm going to overclock, I'm going to need some extra cooling. I've had to narrate this bit because my microphone for some reason wasn't working, but basically I'm seeing if the Raspberry Pi 4 Ice Tower cooler fits, and it looks like it does. So I put some small spacers in to see if they would give it enough room, and it looks like it will fit fine. So I apply some thermal paste and then put that together, and then I've got to find a fan, which you can see on here, and I've connected it via the GPIO pins, and the back one there, the red one, is on 3 volt, and obviously this is the ground one, and yeah, I think it looks fine. I've got the little base on here, little aluminium base, which is a Raspberry Pi 5 one from Editech, and that works fine. It's got a thermal pad between it and the board, so it will disperse some heat through that as well. But it's super quiet. These fans are excellent. So I found some old overclocking settings from the Raspberry Pi forums for the Pi 3B, and these are the ones I've added. So ARM frequency 1600, so the stock speed is 1400, so I've increased it by 200 megahertz, not sure if it's going to work, with an overvoltage of 6. So everything was fine after the overclock, and I've installed NeoFetch, but it has crashed. So it's obviously too much of an overclock. So what I need to do now is shut this down, reboot the Pi from the SD card again. So I can still leave the drive attached because it defaults to SD card like the Pi 4 does. So now I can go back into those overclocking settings. So this will be the boot partition. So let's say OK to open that. And we're looking for config.txt. So this is the external drive, these 2 folders on the left hand side here, and here's all the extra bits I've added. And so let's go with 1550 because it did boot. I'll leave the overvoltage as 6, I think that'll be fine. Yeah, so let's save that. Shut down this SD card OS, and then remove the SD card and boot from the SSD drive again. Okay, so it's the next day. Everything is working with this older version of Raspberry Pi OS. As you can see from the temperature, it's super low. And yesterday I used it a lot, and I was installing different web browsers and testing them out, overclocking and things like that. And it was keeping itself to about 30 degrees most of the time, whereas before that, it was between 50 and 60. So yeah, the Ice Tower cooler, well, as it should, has made a massive difference. But running it at 3 volt, I'm not even conscious that it's on. In fact, I can hear I've got an external NAS drive with a hard drive attached to it, and I can hear that over it, and that's on the floor. So with the overclocking, let's just open a terminal and show you what I'm currently running at. So 1.5 gigahertz I managed, so 1.6 didn't work for me. It booted initially. I installed NeoFetch and then it froze. 155, I did a few more things, but then it kept freezing on the web browser. So 1.5 does seem to be very stable on this Pi 3B Plus. So web browsers wise, Dillo is very good and seems to be installed by default, but not present anywhere. But you can launch it from the terminal, but it is clunky. Yes, it's fast, but it is clunky, and it wouldn't be a web browser I'd want to use particularly. Whereas the ones I've found that do work, or the one I've found that does work, because obviously I mentioned Puffin, and that seemingly not working until the 31st of July maybe. I'll have a look at that at a later time to see what's going on. The only one really that worked satisfactorily for me was Quartz Browser. So if I launch that in real time now, in fact, let's turn down let's get rid of the terminal. You don't want to run anything else really if you're running a browser, and even stick to low tabs. So if I do BBC you can see that it comes up pretty quick. It's pretty snappy for 1 gig, and overall, you know, it's letting me scroll through. There's quite a lot of images on this page, and it's still coping with it pretty well. If I get rid of this and put in Raspberry Pi and just go to their site, so raspberrypi.org, you can see it actually works all right. And if I click on the computers tab to take us to all the Pis, I think overall, as a browser, it is usable. I mean, obviously it's not ideal to have, you know, an old computer with 1 gig of RAM, but as a browser, I think this, until I can get Puffin working, would be the one I would use. I haven't tried video yet. Let's go home. I set Google on the home page. And let's see what we can do with, yeah, this bit's a bit slow. Yeah, this was where it crashed before on one of the other browsers. I can't remember which one now because there were so many browsers I tried. I pretty much went through everything that was on PiApps. So if we, yeah, you can see that it's a bit odd. The PSP video HDR. And this will give me a 4K video. I'm not going to play it in 4K, but it's a nice bright video. It's good for demos. Let's see what it defaults to. Okay, well that's obviously way too slow. Let's change it here. Okay, that's already on 360. And it doesn't seem to have a lower option. Okay, so yeah, let's not bother with the video side of it. The other thing I wanted to try was ZSwap or ZRAM, and PiApps have got one of them on there. I think they call it More RAM or something. So under Tools, I think I found it. Yeah, More RAM. Yeah, so this app uses ZRAM to increase the capacity of your RAM. ZRAM is a kernel module to compress data on the fly and store it in RAM. It just is I found it really good. So let's install that. PiSafe is a really good app for backing up operating systems. I've done separate videos on that. So it looks like it's installing. So that's done. Let's restart. So that's restarted. I've just installed LibreOffice, and that was installed with sudo apt install LibreOffice. If we run zramctl, that shows us that ZRAM is working. Not sure if it shows something on NeoFetch. That still says it's got 1 gig of RAM on NeoFetch. Now, if we right click on the files icon here, I'm going to go into application launch bar settings, and I'm going to remove the internet one, and I'm going to add the Quartz browser for now. Actually, I might let's add Puffin as well, just so it's on there for when I can try it. And it's a nice way of just adding and removing things from here, but I always find it quite hard to find. So just right click on here and then application launch bar. So we close that down. Okay, so let's do some testing. So let's open the browser and we'll do a search for the blue Raspberry Pi and see what it comes up with. So blue Raspberry Pi Brazilian. And let's click on that story. It's got the limited edition Pi comes up there as well. And let's see how quick this comes up. Now we've got ZRAM, now we've overclocked, and it's reasonable. I mean, there's obviously lots of comments on this and there's various images on here. Right, so let me scroll down. If I right click on that, save image, and let's save it in pictures and save. Yeah, that's done. So I can close that down, and then I can open Office and LibreOffice Impress, which is like PowerPoint, and let's see how long that takes to open. It can be quite slow to start up LibreOffice, and again with 1 gig of RAM it's not going to be an ideal situation, but I'm leaving this in real time to show if it's usable or not. Obviously years ago we used much slower computers with programs that ran slower than this. Right, let's pick something with an image in it, or you know, a bit of artwork in it, and let's insert an image, and let's insert the image. How do I go back on here? So this one, So if I do this, will that give me, yeah, so pictures, and so, yeah, this is the image of the Raspberry Pi, and let's see how long it takes to put that in. Could have been better if it was a PNG. Oh, I'm spinning it around. Let's resize it, you can see it. It does struggle a bit. I mean, it is expected, but it is working, and if I wanted to, you know, add something in here, I can change the text. So blue Raspberry Pi. Oh yeah, it is. It did get there eventually, and then I can save that. So save as in documents. Let's call it untitled. That's fine. That's saved, and let's close that down. Just thinking about it. I'm not going to rush it. Oh look, does not seem to be responding. Do you want to force it to exit? Well, I'm not going to do that just yet. Let's give it a chance. Yeah, it did exit on its own. Let's open files. Let's go to my network attached storage, and I've got a new 8 terabyte drive I bought on Prime Day just because I'm worried about running out of storage. So this is my normal storage, and this one is showing us desktop 2 at the moment. I can't remember if I put anything on there. Oh, I did. I put some 8K video files. Yeah, we're not going to try playing those. Although we could try copying them over. How big is this? 379, 735. Okay, so this is nearly 400 megabytes. Let's copy that to the video folder. Where is the video folder? Oh, there it is. And let's paste that in, and let's see if it works all right for file transfers. Yeah, not bad really. My network is quite slow because I'm using power line adapters in this room, and it does seem to slow it down quite a lot as opposed to if I'm directly connected to it. But that's usable for a 400 megabyte file. Yeah, well, overall, I think that's pretty much better than I would have expected for a Raspberry Pi 3B Plus in 2024. It'd be good if I could get Puffin up and running, but it is still coming up with that same error, unfortunately. But yeah, I hope all this helps. I'll definitely be testing some more operating systems. Kang has an Android image, which I'm very hopeful for, and also RetroPie as well. Okay, so I hope all this helps. Thanks very much for watching. Please like and subscribe.